Karl Marx had famously said, history repeats itself, first as a tragedy and then a farce. And Pakistan cozying up to the United States, clearly both a tragedy and a farce. But Pakistan cozying up to the United States has actually emboldened Pakistan to repeatedly threaten India. Thrice in as many days. How should India view these threats? How should India respond? Joining me on India First is Lieutenant General Raj Shukla, former army commander and one of India's foremost voices on strategy. Ambassador Yash Sinha, former High Commissioner to the UK, knows the Indus Waters Treaty very well. And when Pakistan sued India, Ambassador Sinha will tell us how Pakistan was caught on the wrong foot. Abhijit Iyer Mitra is a senior fellow at the Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies. Alexander Slater is a geopolitical expert on national security, joins us in a moment. General Shukla, how would you view these repeated threats from Pakistan? Now, is this meant, when it comes to people like Shahbaz Sharif or Bilawal Bhutto Zardari for domestic consumption, where it comes from Asim Munir, either for the Pakistani diaspora in the US, or is it desperately seeking US intervention on Indus Waters and on Kashmir?
So, Gaurav, good evening to you, to my fellow panelists, and to your viewers. These threats from Munir and Bilawal and Shahbaz Sharif are really not material, though I'll come to them. But before that, I want to make a couple of comments on the broader Indo-US relationship and in that context, Pakistan. So this morning, Marco Rubio gave an interview where he said that, Donald Trump is the president of peace. All credit must go to Trump, and he rattled out the conflicts that he seems to have solved: Cambodia, Thailand, Israel, Iran, Rwanda, Congo, so on and so forth. Now, I was wondering, what is the aim of US foreign policy? Is it to give Mr. Trump the Nobel Prize? Or are there larger objectives to secure American interests in the world? If there were larger objectives, they would see India's great value in taking care of whatever threats or challenges China poses to US. Or is, Trumpian ego becoming synonymous with US foreign policy? Because Mr. Marco Rubio is a man of some wisdom, so I thought. But the entire advisors around Trump, the whole MAGA camp, all they're going to do is get Trump a Nobel Prize. Are these the larger objectives of American foreign policy? So the worry is that the sane voices are going silent. That is my real worry. Now, what is India saying? India is saying, please be a man of peace. But we are also a 5,000-year-old civilization, damn it. We've dealt with larger questions of war and peace. And, we cannot line up for photo shoots at your bidding. We simply cannot do that. Please understand India. We are autonomous in mind and deed. We make our own strategic choices, where to get oil from, when to engage with Iran. That is India. Now, this is what is rattling the West, Trump and his advisors. And I think that is the central issue. Now, what must we do? Well, yes, despite all this, I say we must still stay invested in all the constituencies in America, along the Beltway, the think tanks, Congress, lobbyists. We must also grit our teeth and bear it. Anything that works. I'm saying a combination of pragmatism and principle, but principle is also important. India simply cannot be what the other countries do. That is something wiser American people must understand.
Is very sane words. Absolutely. Trumps will come and Trumps will go.
Is it simply not bad mathematics? Is it not simply bad mathematics to prioritize whatever 23, 24 crore lumpen Pakistanis, and not because of the Pakistani people, but because what the Pakistani military has done to them, over 144 crore vibrant Indians? Yes. That is what America must see. So these are my failed remarks, and the other aspects of what Shahbaz said, the others said, we'll come to later.
Okay. No, you make very sane points, and to any sane person, this is logical. Ambassador Sinha, what do you make, of all these words that come from the Pakistani leadership? Are they emboldened because they're getting all this attention from Trump, and is Trump miffed because all he wants is a Nobel Prize. Let me get a Nobel Prize. I've got peace everywhere. I'm the president of peace. And perhaps he's very angry because when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in Calgary for G7 at Kanakis, he did not go to Washington, D.C. for that photo op with Trump, where Trump wanted to ambush India with Asim Munir for that handshake. He came back to India and said, I have more important things to do. And peace should mean genuine peace. But your take, Ambassador Sinha.
Gaurav, thank you for having me on your show. I The 2 points I want to make. The first point you mentioned about Calgary, and you mentioned the telephone call on the 17th of June between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. Now, the fact of the matter is that Prime Minister Modi was going to Croatia on his way
Yes.
back on an official visit. I think if I recall correctly, it was the first ever visit by a prime minister to Croatia. This was a predetermined program. It's not that you can just change your program and rush and do something else, however important or unimportant that might be. That's number one. So I think in international relations, there is form, and that's how international relations are conducted. Number two, as far as the statements emanating from Pakistan, I think in your initial comments before you started this panel discussion, there was something about dogs barking. And need I say more? Because these people, I have dealt with them for so long. I know
Yes.
that they make a lot of noise, the sort of statements. In fact, Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif, I remember once he got so carried away that he knocked down the mic. It was not in
Yes.
relation to India; it was in relation to something else. But you know that the Prime Minister in Pakistan counts for nothing. It's You all know it's a sham democracy. The most popular leader is in jail, and in any fair election, there would be another prime minister, but that's a different story. As far as the army is concerned, their their complete implacable hostility towards India is well known. In fact, the
Hmm.
prime minister mentioned the enemy. I'm glad he did, because I hope your viewers realize that there are some in India who still don't view Pakistan as an enemy. They would still rather go and light candles at the border. So I think we need to be very clear whom we are dealing with. As far as India is concerned, I'm sure our armed forces are well equipped to handle the threat that's emanating from Pakistan, or that will emanate from Pakistan in the future.
Sir, completely take your point. And Abhijit, when we say barking dogs seldom bite, it may be true, but with Pakistan, after Asim Munir's rant, the Pahalgam terror attack took place. After his second rant, and especially when he says, we'll start from the east and move west, how would you view one, these statements? Two, the first statement actually came when he was on US soil. Three, when you look at America, is Donald Trump, is it all about that cryptocurrency deal with Pakistan? Because Pakistan doesn't have much money. It can't be oil. 16 past attempts to drill oil failed. The Americans drilled oil, they didn't succeed. The Canadians did it, the Europeans did it. There was no oil. Had there been oil, China would have harnessed it already. What do you make of Trump's sudden Pakistan love?
Not to mention the fact, Gaurav, that if the Americans go into Balochistan now, how are the Chinese going to react, having expended so much blood and money on
The
so-called
CPEC.
developing Balochistan? So
Yes.
it's good for us. I mean, it's stirring the pot for us, and that's very good. If China falls out with Pakistan, that's an excellent thing. But let's just address the core issues here. I've said since the end of Operation Sindoor on the 10th of that month, uh,
Yes.
Asim Munir has been desperate for some kind of a PR victory. He claims he shot down, I don't know how many 100 Rafales or 500 Rafales. I forget what the current number is, but that was the Air Force shooting it down. What did he do to become Field Marshal? So his very promotion to Field Marshal shows you his desperation, number one. Remember, it did not go down. The Pahalgam attack and what happened after that. He can hide whatever losses they had from his public. He can't hide it from the core commanders. And as I understand it from all my sources in Pakistan, the core commanders are very upset with him. Now, his dilemma is he needs another attack on India. Not necessarily in Kashmir, it may come through Nepal, it may come through Bangladesh, something like that. But he needs it, and I've been saying this for a long time. We may be able to parry about 100 attacks, but the 101st attack will always succeed. That has always been the logic of terrorism. The issue then is, what will he do when India retaliates to that attack? Now, when it comes to the water treaty, it's slightly different. Do you remember the Atlantic shooting down case in 1999 where we shot
Yes.
down a Leger Atlantic?
The helicopter I was on board was almost shot down by the Pakistani Stinger, the Mi-17, Mi-8
Right.
that time in Nalia. Go on, sir.
Right. Now, what happens with that is, if you remember at international arbitration, the Pakistanis went for international arbitration knowing fully well that India's accession to the ICJ was based on an exclusion of all other Commonwealth countries. They still decided to spend about $50 million on that arbitration, lost it on jurisdictional grounds. Again, they have gone, and remember, the Permanent Court of Arbitration is not the ICJ.
Yes.
The annexes to the Indus Water Treaty very clearly state a neutral expert, and even that now does not hold. It is infructuous because it is now in abeyance. So what
Yes.
they're doing now is, it could be one of, I think the statements that Munir has made in America are again grandstanding, but they do point towards an impending attack of some kind, which he needs to save his career. But what Shehbaz Sharif is doing is exactly what Nawaz Sharif did. That when the Atlantic was shot down, we're taking you to international arbitration. They need some kind of
Okay.
public. So it's a mix
Okay,
of.
so they're desperate. It shows their desperation. Alexander Slater, conventional wisdom suggests, as General Raj Shukla was also pointing out, US and India should remain strong partners. It benefits both countries. It benefits both economies. The aim, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in the US in February, was to take bilateral trade to $500 billion by 2030. US and India were also talking about coming together to checkmate expansionist forces, China. How do you see Trump's changed attitude towards India?
Gaurav, thanks so much for having me here. It's wonderful to be part of this discussion with the other panelists. I think you're 100% right. I think the U.S. and India, for all the reasons that you cited, are natural partners, and it's difficult to explain the sudden turn in events. Obviously, the inability of the two sides to come together on a trade agreement has been a focal point of the rupture. But I think we all know now that this has been building for some time. Clearly, the disagreement between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump over how to discuss what happened in May and what led to the conclusion of the cross-border conflict has helped push us to where we are today. I think the key is to look forward, as you're suggesting. How do we get out of this? How do we get back to a better place between the two countries, who again are natural partners? Both have very strong interests in creating a free, open, prosperous, and peaceful Indo-Pacific. It's why they've worked together so hard over the last, I guess, since really 2008. Everybody understands that an expansionist China is quite dangerous for all of the countries in the Indo-Pacific, and especially India's long-term goals of continuing its rise to be the third largest economy in the world, given that Asia is going to be a major export market for Indian companies.
So India is doing
so-
everything that's required to achieve that aim. What explains America's changed, attitude in the way you look at it?
Yeah, I think that, President Trump is a different type of president. He's very different than President Biden in numerous ways. I think that the prior administration really was focused on working to build up India to help its rise, and saw its rise as very complementary. This president has a different approach to world affairs, and thinks that access to the U.S. market is an asset for other countries, and he is seeking to leverage that to open up opportunities for American exporters and to align other countries with the foreign policy priorities of the United States. I'll say this one thing. ending the conflict in Ukraine is in India's interests. And so this president has taken a bit of a harder line, of course, with India, with this additional 25% tariffs when it comes to Russian oil.
So why did he chicken out with China?
It's a very great point, but I don't think that that's going to go on forever. I think people are interpreting that as I think they call it the taco trade here in the United States, where he doesn't necessarily follow through on his initial threats, but below the surface, that's only going to go on for so long. There are certain things and steps the United States is taking to reduce reliance on China and to that's not going to go on forever. And so I do think that you will see increasing pressure on US-China ties as well. But look, the point is more this. We have to separate the actual underlying economic drivers and the political drivers, right? Nobody likes to be seen to be pushed around on the world stage. Nobody. It's why these conversations often happen behind the scenes, right? When the US and India were at odds over India's imports of oil from Venezuela or Iran, they worked behind the scenes to resolve the situation, and India reduced its purchases and ultimately stopped buying oil from either of those countries. The same thing can be done here. It just has to be done in a very different way than it's being done now.
Okay, so he's fired the bullet. Now he wants the bullet to be taken back. Clearly, that doesn't happen. And especially when you're dealing, General Shukla, as you said, with a 5,000-year-old civilization, we wouldn't want anyone to lecture us. We've withstood sanctions before. Not that we would want sanctions, but this is something, when it comes to India's pride, I'm sure that there is no way that India would want to be lectured, especially when America is following double standards, and not just with China, with Europe, with America itself, General Shukla. They continue to buy uranium for their nuclear energy. They continue to get fertilizers and chemicals for themselves, but they want to lecture us. It just doesn't add up.
It's not only there's China, Turkey, the shadow fleet, Europe. We know what's happening. But the other issue is, I would just like to recall, I think it was the Prime Minister in the 2014 campaign trail, when he was asked about India's foreign policy, he says, na aankh utha ke baat karenge, na aankh jhuka ke. We will neither bully nor get bullied. This much, reach the ears of the Trump administration loud and clear. We are not going to get bullied. Having said that, these are challenging times for Indian statecraft. While staying engaged with USA, if things go further astray, what are our options? There are options. Russia, the global south, the near hegemon. If the faraway hegemon is acting nasty, there are things we can do. We are not without options. There are many options with us. We won't like to go down that path, but if pushed, there are huge options for us. One point I would say that we must look at our strategic military capacities. We are not resourcing them in the manner that we should for the, the challenges that are coming our way. Last point, I would just like to, examine this nuclear doctrine that Asim Munir unfolded from Florida. So what was he really saying? He was saying, dekho, India is committed to NFU, so India will never use nuclear weapons, at least not in the first instance. So we will do this terror strike. India will respond conventionally. We will lose. And when we are getting decimated, we'll blow ourselves up. I mean, what kind of madrasa nuclear ideology is this? He's got his strategic plans divisions, very smart Pakistani officers. They would be disappointed with this. I'm surprised that the West and the USA has not condemned this kind of nonsense. Nuclear deterrence is a very serious matter. Nobody knows it better than the Americans. Yes. And look at the kind of, absolutely outstandingly stupid statements that are coming out. Not only irresponsible, downright stupid. I mean, this amazes me to the extreme.
Ambassador Sinha, America claims to be big on nuclear non-proliferation, though its record has been very bad. It's looked the other way when Pakistan was the nuclear Walmart, and America knew it. Pakistan was, as you know better, sir, you were dealing with Pakistan directly. Their C-130, imagine an American-made aircraft, C-130 was flying to Iran and America was looking the other way. Deals were being done with Libya, America was looking the other way. But how do you, one, look at this nuclear threat? The the threats that come from Pakistan, and how India should actually deal with both these emerging situations?
Gaurav, I liked your description of the Walmart. In fact, I recall I was posted in Pakistan when
Yes, sir.
AQ Khan network was active, very active, and we were aware of what he was up to. And of course, our friends, our partners in the West, either didn't believe us or chose to ignore it. I think the second is probably true. The latter is true. I think what has happened is saber rattling. Nuclear saber rattling is not new. Pakistan has done it. Successive army chiefs have done it. So it's nothing new. The only problem is that this particular chief, given his background, we shouldn't dismiss it out of hand. But I like what General Shukla had said about, trying to blow themselves up and take half the world down with them. That was the most astounding statement that I've heard.
And
emanating
just 1 minute,
from Pakistan.
Ambassador Sir, which half? The American
Yeah.
half or the Chinese half?
Or probably both, I think, the way a nuclear war pans out. But one point I'd like to make, the India-US relationship is extremely important. We must understand that. And we should not get carried away by sentiment. We should not throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is a 17-year moment. I read somewhere, 1971, when the Seventh Fleet was sailing towards the Bay of Bengal. And you know what happened. 1998, after our nuclear test, and now it's 2025. We rode the storm. There are ups and downs in relationships. And I like the point that Mr. Slater made, that there are other issues. It's a very wide relationship. There are many other issues. Now we have to see what will happen now. Trade, the 25th of August, if a delegation comes from the US, what will be the outcome? If the Prime Minister goes to attend the UNGA in September, will there be a meeting with President Trump? All these are imponderables which we will have to wait and see. But one point I wanted to make about the Indus Water Treaty, I think Mr. Mitra had referred to it. There's the dispute resolution mechanism. There are three aspects. One is the Permanent Indus Commission. The other is the independent monitor, and the neutral expert, and the third is the Court of Arbitration. And as you mentioned in your opening remarks, in 2012, 2013, I was the co-agent for India at the arbitration at the PCA, the Permanent Court of Arbitration on Kishanganga. The interim judgment that came after that, we won handedly. Now, the situation has changed because we have the World Bank did something completely absurd. They kicked in two dispute resolution mechanisms simultaneously, nuclear expert and a court of arbitration. And now that we've held the treaty in abeyance, and another thing, reacting to Shahbaz Sharif, we have not stopped any water. The water is flowing as it is. What we do in the future is a different matter. But till now, we haven't stopped waters. We haven't built any dams on the Indus or Jhelum. So what we will do, definitely, and I hope we do, the Tulbul navigation project on the Jhelum must be started immediately. And that's a navigation project, with or without Pakistani objections. So we will follow the elements of the treaty as much as it suits us. And I don't think now they're going to be held back by either protestations from Pakistan, the objections that they raise all the time, or any sanctimonious lecturing by any permanent court of arbitration.
Sanctimonious lecturing, and why should we? And I completely agree with all of you that India-US relationship is extremely important, and that's why both countries in the past 25 years, post 1999 Kargil war, have invested so much in this relationship. But Alexander Slater, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the United States in February, India was seen as quick off the block, wanted a quick trade deal, a bilateral trade deal by fall, and everything was being put in place. What I want to understand from you is, one, why did things change? Two, when you look at three aspects here in that compact that was signed, that declaration that came, one was technology, the other was strategic partnership, the third was trade. When it comes to technology, there is science and technology cooperation that's happening. There will be a joint military exercise, and India is sending a big contingent to Alaska. Will trade, in your appreciation, come back on an even keel? Is it just being used, this additional 25% sanctions, to browbeat India into accepting, some American points? Or is Trump very clear it's his way or highway?
I think it's probably both on that last point. I think that President Trump is serious about getting Russia to the negotiating table and is looking for ways to motivate other powers, including India, who talks about a special relationship with Russia, to push Vladimir Putin to that negotiating table. And again, I think it is in India's interest for Russia's invasion of Ukraine to end, and for there to be peace there, for a variety of reasons, which, it's why Prime Minister Modi in 2022 said now is not an era of war to Putin directly, right after the invasion. So again, I think there's alignment there. I think he's trying to motivate India to do more there. And I think President Trump genuinely believes that India's purchases of Russian oil enables Russia to continue on a more aggressive tack towards Ukraine and not come to the table. So I think there's
So
genuine
may I just
reason for that.
intervene for 30 seconds? Indian
course.
purchases from Russia, you say, encourages that war machine. What about American purchases from Russia? Does that deter Russia? What about Europe's purchases from Russia? Does that deter Russia? I don't understand this logic, sir.
So Gaurav, on this particular point, what I said was I think President Trump believes this. I'm not asserting what is or isn't. I think if you look at the data, the amount of oil that India purchases from Russia substantially
Is
exceeds
much less than what Europe purchases from Russia in terms of LNG. Much less in terms of value, in terms of quantities. So I don't understand this logic. I mean, why? I seriously want to know this. Every Indian wants to know this. We want good ties with America, but not these double standards from America.
So look, I think on these issues, this is President Trump's policy, and I don't work for the administration. I'm here to explain what I think he believes and why he thinks this is important. And again, I think when it comes to what India can do, and where its interests lie. I don't think that the delta between what India buys in terms of of oil from Russia and what it would get on the market price is hugely significant. But let's put that aside. I mean, I honestly don't think that that's the major point here. I think what you're asking about really is how do these countries come back to the trade table together? And on that point, on this extra 25%, I think on one hand, President Trump genuinely believes the things that he's said about why he's concerned about India's oil purchases from Russia, and he thinks that he can motivate India to put more pressure on Russia. But I think he also is using it as a way to get leverage at the bargaining table on trade.
Okay.
And I think that India is responding in a level-headed way, is showing its continued interest in trying to reach an agreement on trade. I think that the sides were extremely close, and I think they have a nice framework in place to reach an agreement. The ultimate outcome is going to depend on both sides deciding that, look, nobody's going to get everything that they want. And is the long-term health of the relationship more important than being able to come out and say publicly, I won or I dominated? That seems to me far less important. But I will take one more point that you made. It's a very good sign that the two countries remain very well connected on the military to military level, that cooperation continues, that also India continues to work with other allies of the United States, including the Philippines, on strategic cooperation and military ties. This is what's fundamentally important and creates a broader frame for the two countries to come together on trade as well. So I'm hopeful for that.
Okay, Abhijit, with the last 30 seconds I have on this part of the show, is that trust factor, 25 years invested in it, that comfort level, has that been lost? And a lot then would depend, one, not just on the talks that happen in Alaska between President Trump and President Putin, but also whether the trade delegation comes from the United States around the 25th of August for the next round or sixth round of talks.
Look, we've always been very iffy in our trust factor with the Americans. Even with the last government, remember, they were undermining us through other resources.
Yes.
That was much more insidious. They were using NGOs and that entire network under USA to undermine us. This is a much, much more direct to-fro. The problem is this particular thing, even though it's not that defense sales are embargoed or anything like that, the problem here is that when you decide that a bilateral relationship depends on a third country, then you fundamentally start attacking the basis of that relationship. So, on one
Yes.
hand, it is not as insidious as what Biden tried to do or Obama tried to do, uh, but it does strike at the root. So, yes, there is some kind of great unease and a loss of trust. I think it set the relationship back. Can it get back on track? Is it unrecoverable? Absolutely not. One last point, Gaurav. The sheer duplicity of the so-called 50% tariff is the fact that if India imports Russian oil and processes it, check Annex 2 of the executive order. If we export
Yes.
that very oil to America, it is exempt.
Yes.
This has nothing to do about stopping the war in Ukraine at all. This is much more to do with personal pique because of the way the exemptions are, carved out. They are not to punish Russia. They're just to punish Indian consumption of Russian oil, not any consumption of Russian oil that helps America.
Or Europe. You're absolutely
Or
right.
Europe.
I have run out of time on this part of the show, but General Shukla, Ambassador Sinha, Mr. Slater, and Abhijit Iyer Mitra for joining me here on this India Today broadcast. There's a lot happening internationally, globally, and India is right in the center of this Chakravyuh of changing dynamics and equations internationally. To talk more about this and where are we in this Chakravyuh, it is my proud privilege to welcome on the Chakravyuh podcast Ambassador Kanwal Sibal. Where do you see India right now in midst of this global Chakravyuh as we look at America suddenly cozying up to Pakistan and Asim Munir, is in America for the second time in a couple of months. The way America calls Pakistan a phenomenal partner in the war on terror, and the way 25% plus an additional 25% sanctions have been imposed on a close strategic partner that India is.
Well, we have been through these kind of difficulties in the past. The country that has sanctioned us the most and weakened our strategic rise in a very material way for a few decades was the United States of America. After the nuclear deal in 2005, relations began to improve, and the United States walked back from those sanctions, realized that they were futile. Since India had gone nuclear, there was no way that they could push back India's nuclear program, so they had to reconcile with a new India and potentially much more powerful India. And since we had also started liberalizing our economy, so they had then an enhanced economic interest in the Indian market. And then it's around this time, not quite, there were problems that were arising in US-China relations because China had begun to rise phenomenally. Yes. And after Xi Jinping came to power and he unveiled his cards, then it was quite clear that it was not the China of Deng Xiaoping or Hu Jintao that US was dealing with, but a much more assertive nationalist China, which has certain ambitions and which had declared that by 2050 they will be at the center of international relations, which means either equal to or displacing the United States. So that also increased US interest in India. And then there was a big change in India-US relations, where today US is our biggest economic partner, biggest trade partner in goods and services, biggest investor in India. It's become a very significant defense partner with about $22-24 billion of defense trade between the two countries. And so many other agreements have taken place in order to strengthen our defense ties, whether it's the foundational agreements or Malabar exercises or bilateral air naval air naval land exercises, tri-services exercises. They name the Pacific Command as the Indo-Pacific Command. There's the Quad. There is the whole Indo-Pacific strategy. So look at the change.
And now are we witnessing another change all of a sudden?
No, what I meant is that there are these fluctuations in international relations, and India has gone through them. And not only has India survived, but India has emerged stronger. As the challenges have become stronger, we've had to redefine our own thinking and approach and policies, and have emerged stronger, as I said, fourth largest economy this year and third largest by 2030. Though, mind you, the gap between us and China or us and the United States is very considerable.
Yes.
But we are a rising market, a huge consumer market, 1.4 billion people, where domestic consumptions will go up, rate of growth, 6 point whatever percent. Look at the huge prospect other countries have in the Indian market. I mean, the Western countries in particular. Therefore, India is going to be very, very important. Look at Europe. They are growing at 1%, 0.5% or whatever else. And other countries, small countries, they may be growing at a rapid rate, but the market is too small. China is the biggest defense supplier to Pakistan. This is a chimera. This is a kind of a fantasy that some people seem to have with regard to what they can do in Pakistan. And therefore, there's a big question mark, almost unthinkable. What is the reason? What is the reason that they are mollycoddling Pakistan, building up
What
Pakistan?
comes to your mind, sir,
It's obvious, no? Part of it.
to counter India's rise?
Keep a pressure point on India.
So they haven't changed. They may call us their comprehensive strategic partner, but the aim is a subservient India, a servile India.
No. They know we can't be a servile India. Even when we were weak, we were not servile. So when we are strong, we are not going to be servile. Certainly not. I think they understand that. The previous administration understood it and specifically stated so that we're not looking for a military alliance. We know that India is against military alliances. It's a long game. Progressively, they want to wean away India from its past relationships. So it's not as if they think that India is a country that can be pressured into doing what they want. I think this much they understand. But in order to make sure that India wings do not grow too large and starts flying up in the air far too high, they need some pressure points.
So one pressure point is Pakistan?
Is the most important and the immediate pressure point. Certainly.
And the other one is Bangladesh now.
That again, yes, because the manner in which they worked for the ouster of Sheikh Hasina and got these Islamists into power, knowing fully well that this is what is going to happen. They opened a new pressure point. And here's the irony of it. Who's trying to bring Bangladesh and Pakistan together? China.
Yeah.
Wang Yi had a meeting with both of them. And now America has got into the game. So both China and United States see indirectly working together to create problems for India in Bangladesh.
So neither China nor America want India to rise.
Well, want India to rise. India will rise whether they want it or not. But the point is they must have some levers of pressure. And they would like to retain those. That doesn't mean that they only want to rely on the levers of pressure. They also have separate vital interests in India for obvious reasons. So they'll continue to court us and have relationship with us, but not give up. There are other options. Now, in a very different way, here we have to be realistic. We do these things ourselves, don't we? We want to keep a foot in every door, but not with the same kind of intention of using leverages to destabilize or put pressure on others, but to protect our interests. Now, we are very solidly committed to our relationship with Russia, no matter what the United States thinks.
And you're very confident of that. You've been...
Yeah, and therefore, the United States has been unhappy. They've been saying that. And now Trump has brought this issue up in the air once again, rather surprisingly, objecting to our oil trade and our defense trade with Russia, which means it rankles within the system. After all, he's not alone in this. There must be other people who are also of the same view and feeding this kind of a thing into the system. So despite that, India has stood firm. Now, they can argue that India may have whatever is their views on Pakistan, But we have our own interests in Pakistan, therefore we will continue to have relationship with Pakistan. If India doesn't want to, thinks that it has strategic autonomy, then we too have strategic autonomy, so we'll do what we want.
And what did you think of India's statement that when we said America continues to buy uranium hexafluoride or palladium or chemicals and fertilizers from Russia, not a word after that. Europe continues to buy LNG from Russia, and no sanctions on them, but 25% sanctions on us, no additional sanctions on China. So is he just bullying India?
Yes.
Just pure bullying.
Yes, yes. And the fun thing is that I was looking at statistics. I put it on X this morning, I think, or yesterday. I looked at statistics from 2022 when the Ukraine conflict began, and when Europe was applying all the sanctions that they could possibly think of along with America on Russia. Their total import of Russian gas, LNG, and refined petroleum products is $214 billion.
Wow.
And if you look at the LNG imports from Russia, beginning 2022, every year they have increased by a sizable percentage.
Yes.
Right? Look at the hypocrisy of all this. Look at Turkey. It's the biggest buyer of refined products from Russia. No sanctions. Japan gets a very sizable amount of oil from Russia because they were, in fact, partner with us in trilateral deals with the Americans in Sakhalin. They're still getting, I understand, I'm not too sure of the figure, that 8% of the energy needs of Tokyo it comes from what they import from Russia. So Japan is not targeted, but India is. India is. But why? So, and the funny part is, and this you know, I mean, you know even as well as I do, and we've said that officially, that is the Americans who encouraged us to buy, continue buying, and others too, continue buying Russian oil so as to keep the price of oil globally stable. Because the 5 million barrels a day went out of the market, that's the Russian oil, then the price of oil would have shot up to maybe $200, $150, and would have affected the American consumer.
So when he knows all of this, yet he says this, does he expect India to just stay silent, accept it like several countries? You know, Japan is a treaty ally and it accepted it. South Korea is a treaty ally. They have American forces deployed there and they've accepted it. European Union, though European Union now is saying, no, we haven't committed the money. Japan also seems to be furiously backpedaling, saying we may invest. He just wants that big headline. Should we also give him that big headline?
See, there's a big difference. All the three entities you mentioned, EU, South Korea, Japan, they're all dependent on US for their security.
Yes.
There's a China threat in Western Pacific. There's now Ukraine war where Russia is seen as a threat. So they have very little room for maneuver. We don't depend on the United States for our security. We have more room for maneuver.